Will the impression from this dog track in the mud still be visible in 250 million years? Where, why, and how do we see impressions from 250 million years ago here in the Connecticut Valley? The where is easy. There are many locations, including in Holyoke, Massachusetts, very close to Holyoke Community College. But there is a larger and more stunning array of tracks of a similar type in Rocky Hill, Connecticut, at a location known as Dinosaur State Park. On August 23, 1966, during construction for a state office building in Rocky Hill, heavy equipment operator Bob McCarthy brought his equipment to a screeching halt. There was something he thought he saw, and indeed he did. The result was the careful excavation and preservation of more than 2,000 tracks, making one of the largest track sites in North America. At this site just south of Hartford, Connecticut, it might have been a snapshot of a single day of life or a few days that was unearthed, along with the rock that surrounds them and lies underneath. It's all been left in place, as discovered, and protected by a man-made dome.
So I've been working here for the last 7 years, and I got involved thanks a lot to my uncle who works for the waste management department of DEEP. I've been interested in dinosaurs and paleontology my entire life, since before I can even remember, and he let me know that the position was open. So in the, I believe it was spring of 2012, I interviewed for the position. All of my knowledge about dinosaurs and prehistory is self-taught. I have never taken any formal classes on the subject, with the exception of one general geology course. But it's something that's always been very interesting to me. So it's been something I've been sort of dedicated a lot of my time to studying. So when it came time for the interview, I just sort of let them have it with everything that I knew, everything that I could say, and I guess it worked, because here I am. For most people that work here, they have to have some type of natural history background, whether it is geology, paleontology, biology. We've had people with degrees in oceanography, with ecology. Really any just kind of natural history training is very helpful. And of course, people have to be friendly, you have to be able to, present clearly. You can't have a problem with public speaking, of course. And it's a matter of being able to not only know all this stuff, but also to teach it to people, to all types of people, whether they are 2 years old or 98.
Are there myths about dinosaurs that people bring with them when they come to visit, and that they learn some other things about when they come?
All sorts. It's no secret, of course, that the main metric by which people use to measure dinosaurs is what they see in movies and TV shows and such, especially things like Jurassic Park. But of course, we've learned a lot, and we continue to learn a lot. And some things that were hard facts 2 weeks ago now are things that we no longer think. If there's one thing that I wish people would take away when they come here to Dinosaur State Park, is that dinosaurs are not extinct, that birds are dinosaurs, and pretty much everything we think of that makes a bird, everything from wishbones to feathers, those are all features that first show up in certain groups of dinosaurs, and the only reason birds have them is because they are dinosaurs as well.
Directly descended?
Directly descended, yep. So today, scientists consider birds to be a type of dinosaur. They are part of a group called the Maniraptor and Theropods, which is also a group that includes Velociraptor. So they are, pun slightly intended, very deeply nested in the dinosaur family tree.
So as far as As far as the Dilophosaurus is concerned, that's the dinosaur that makes tracks here.
Right.
Can you tell us a bit about what's known about that species, if that's a species or if it's more of a genus, I don't know, and how it was discovered and linked to this site?
So, of course, we don't know for sure which dinosaur made our footprints because we've never found any bones here. We only have the footprints. The main reason we think that Dilophosaurus was the dinosaur was because its feet are the right size, they're the right shape, and it lived at the right time. So Dilophosaurus skeletal remains do not come from Connecticut, they come from Arizona. So far, there is only one skeleton known from this animal. Its most distinctive features are the two crests on its head from which it gets its name. Dilophosaurus means two-crested lizard. Dilophosaurus is one of the largest meat eaters we know of from that time in the Earth's history. This is about 200 million years ago in the early Jurassic period. It's about 6 to 7 meters long, so just about 20-25 feet, and would have weighed about half a ton. So as far as meat-eating dinosaurs go, that's pretty much smack dab right in the middle. Some dinosaurs in this group, you can, this tiny, you can fit them right in between your thumb and your index finger. Others can be over 50 feet long. It was probably one of the top predators in the world at that time. But when we look at Dilophosaurus, we notice that it may have been actually a fish eater. If we look at the skull, we notice that on the very tip there is a hooked notch. This is a feature that we sometimes see in fish-eating animals. It's a adaptation for grasping, for holding on to slippery prey. Crocodiles have a similar thing. However, it is also possible that Dilophosaurus was a generalist predator, that even though it had adaptations for eating fish, it would have been perfectly happy to eat other animals as well. It does not have the cone-shaped teeth that we typically see in fish-eating animals like crocodiles. Its teeth are very typical for a meat-eating dinosaur. They are knife-shaped, flat in cross-section, pointed, and with little serrations running down the edges.
Can you talk a little bit about the aquatic environment that would be in the area where the tracks were found at the time?
Mm-hmm. So when we look at the rocks that the tracks are preserved in, we see that in some layers there are ripple marks in the surface of the rock. These are exactly like what we see today. When we go to the lake, say you're on vacation and you're going to the lake with your family, you see these little ripples in the shallow water. It's the same thing happening today that was happening 200 million years ago, so that tells us that there was a lake here. We know that this is fresh water, not salt water, because if it was salt water, you'd have tidal forces coming in and washing away all the footprints. Because it covers such a wide area, this tells us that we're dealing with either a lake or a flood playa, a thin sheet of shallow water just sort of covering the ground. So these lakes were pretty prominent in Connecticut 200 million years ago. Back then, the eastern and western hills of the state were much higher than they are today. They were full mountain ranges, similar in size to the Himalayas. So what you have are these huge mountains in the eastern and western parts of the state, and in between them you have the valley, which is where the tracks are. So when it rains, you have these lakes that gather in the valley, as well as hitting the mountains and eroding away the sediments. So that's what brings the sand to the lakes that the dinosaurs are walking in when they come here. As the dinosaurs are walking in the sand, leaving their mud, they leave their footprints behind, of course, and then as time goes on, there's a change in the weather. Things get drier, and all the water evaporates, the lake shrinks, exposing tracks to the hot sun outside, and all that sand sort of dries out and it becomes hard with the footprints still inside. And then next time there's lots of rain, you have the lake growing again and burying the footprints with new sand and new mud.
We also have in some of the rock outside some shale layers?
Yes. So the shale formed in the deeper part of the lake where there was not a whole lot of oxygen. So our rocks contain trace amounts of iron, so when they're exposed to lots of oxygen, they oxidize, they turn color, whereas the shale is still a very dark gray. And we find fish fossils in those rocks as well, so that confirms the hypothesis that that was in the deeper part of the lake. That's also why we don't find any dinosaur footprints there, because it's too deep for them to be leaving footprints. Here at Dinosaur State Park, we also have basalt volcanic rock from volcanic activity 200 million years ago out on our nature trails, on the blue trail and the yellow trail. So those are the rocks that we use for dating our fossils here.
So can you talk a bit about the positive and the negative imprints that are discussed in the museum?
So a positive footprint is basically just a fancy word for a footprint. It's the actual spot where the dinosaur put its foot in it, so to speak. And then the negative impression is basically a natural cast. So as that footprint gets filled up with sediments, it forms a different layer. The two layers are sandwiched right in between each other. Now, if those two layers can be very carefully broken apart from each other, you will get the actual shape of the footprint. It's just like if you were to make a cast of the footprint, you would get the reverse. So instead of it going into the rock, it pops up out of it.
There's actually a seam or a way to get in between those two layers?
There can be. It takes very, very, very careful working, takes a lot of patience. A lot of the negative impressions from our trackway have been successfully removed. At the moment, a lot of them are in the parking lot. Some of them are on the grounds, on the trails, just so people can see them. Others, unfortunately, were not able to remove. They're still stuck in their footprints. So when you look at the trackway, you'll see features that look a bit like old dried pancake batter. Those are the negative impressions still stuck in the footprint. So here we have a pretty good example of both a positive impression and the corresponding negative impression. It's pretty easy to see. They fit together, kind of like pages of a book. All along the surface of the rock, you can see the ripple marks. That was the evidence of the shallow water here. So in this particular instance, these two layers separated very nicely from each other. But it doesn't always work out that way, unfortunately. Right.
Now, there are some tracks I've read where it was believed that they were partial tracks where the heel wasn't part of the track because there was swimming going on. There was some kind of a foot stroke or underwater kick.
Right. So these particular marks, they're very interesting. They're very different from the footprints. What they are basically two parallel scratch marks. So here we have, this looks like a right foot. You have the innermost toe here, the middle toe, which leaves this sort of hole, and then the outermost toe, which leaves another scratch similar to the innermost toe. What was originally hypothesized about this was that the dinosaurs were going into slightly deeper water, and so that they would flex their toes forward and then scratch the ground as they were paddling their feet. So because you have two toes, the two outer toes are the same length, and then the middle toe is greater length. So the two outer ones both just leave a scratch, and then the middle toe digs into the dirt a little bit. Now, since that hypothesis was come up with, it's since been thought that that's not the case. So what's thought is happening is that there is a thicker substrate that is basically absorbing the pads of the dinosaur's feet, and only their claws make a mark when they actually step into it. And same thing. There's a couple of reasons for that thinking. First of all, it's basically thought that the water here couldn't have been too deep, otherwise the dinosaurs would not have been able to leave footprints in the first place. So that's one reason. Another reason also has to deal with examining modern animal tracks and looking at, okay, where in nature else do we see this? Where else in nature do we see marks like this? And the answer seems to be, again, from just sort of walking over thicker substrate. The question that a lot of people sometimes ask where these cracks came from, they are not the result of construction work. This is all natural. This was all here when they were first excavated. This is largely the result of faulting. So the Earth's continents sit on huge plates that are constantly moving. It's those movements of those plates that cause earthquakes, volcanoes, and other things like that. Now, when our dinosaurs were here, Connecticut is much farther south. It's kind of right along where Puerto Rico is today. As it's been drifting north, there's been several different things happening to the surface of the tracks. The biggest one would be faulting. So faulting is when the actual movement of the ground, movement of the earth, causes everything to become tilted. That's why when you look on the trackway, it's on a big slant. When the dinosaurs were here, it was all flat. And this is only a minor example. In other examples, there are actually walls covered with footprints, some places in the world, that look as if the dinosaur was actually walking on a wall or a ceiling. All because the movement of the ground is causing everything to be kind of reshuffled. So there's an entire system of classification devoted to fossil traces. It's called ichnology. Its birthplace was actually in the Central Valley of Connecticut and Massachusetts about 200 years ago. And basically, when you find a fossilized footprint, probably the number one question that anyone wants to know is, what animal made it? Unfortunately, we don't have the animals with us to compare them, so instead we have to look for other sources. The first thing we have to do is find any fossilized skeletal material that matches the size and shape. So for the Brontes footprints, we have 3 long toes. The middle toe is the longest. Each of the toes has a sharp claw on the tip, and there's also a pronounced heel at the back. So that automatically is going to tell us that this footprint was made by a medium-sized predatory dinosaur, a meat eater. So we're not going to be looking for any 4-legged plant eaters. It's got to be a 2-legged meat eater. And then we look at the size. So this is about medium size for a meat-eating dinosaur. So about 25 feet long at the most and weighing at about half a ton. So then we have to do is look at all the dinosaurs we know about and then see if there were any that matched that description that were alive at the same time this footprint was made. So sometimes people will ask, well, how do you know it wasn't made by a young T-Rex? Well, the reason we know that is because this footprint is about 134 million years older than T-Rex is. T-Rex is actually a lot closer in time to all of us than it is the dinosaur that made this footprint. So when we look at the size of the footprint, shape of the footprint, as well as when it was made, how long ago it was made, those are the 3 biggest clues that make us think that Dilophosaurus is the dinosaur that made this footprint. And even if it wasn't Dilophosaurus, it would have been an extremely similar dinosaur, same size and shape.
There's geology collections in the display cases, but also here you can work on it for the junior geologists. So this is a place where not only families and children come and individuals to learn about dinosaurs, but it's also, I understand, a place where academic research is done.
Yes, Dinosaur State Park is one of the best places in the world to study dinosaur footprints. Just as a very small example, a number of colleges from the 3 surrounding states bring classes here for their students to do a program on the trackway where they measure the size of the footprint and the stride length between footprints to calculate how big the dinosaurs were and also how fast they were moving. There has been a lot of ongoing research by many different academics who come here to learn new things. Some of the most recent work has been done on the footprints, measuring them in 3D with a computer, taking digital photos and then sort of mapping them in 3D. And the purpose of that experiment is basically to try to narrow down if we can figure out how many dinosaurs were here at a given time. At this point, we have a pretty good idea that it was at the very least more than 1, but apart from that, we really don't know. So what that research is hoping to do is to narrow down to say, okay, there were between 15 and 30 dinosaurs here over, an X length of time.
So as you've been working here and you get a lot of questions and you give a lot of answers, what are some of the things that either might have stumped you or surprised you as you've done your research over the years working here?
It was definitely a delightful surprise to learn that the Connecticut Valley is not only one of the best places to look for dinosaur footprints, but also it is the birthplace of ichnotaxonomy, the study, and not only ichnotaxonomy, but ichnology itself, the study of fossilized traces, the study of things left behind by extinct animals when they were still alive. And that can cover everything from not only footprints, but everything from bite marks on bones, fossilized feces, burrows, anything that's left behind from when the animal was still alive. That study began in Amherst College.